It's good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. and I'd like to call to order a special board meeting of the Board of Directors of Friday, September 11th, 2020. Before we begin, please note this meeting is being recorded. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Thank you and good morning, everyone. Director Arnold. Absent. Director Belforte. Absent. Director Fewer.
Present.
Present. Director Frederick.
Yes.
Present. Director Garbarino.
Present.
Present. Director Grosboll.
Present.
Present. Director Hernandez.
Here.
Present. Director Hill.
Here.
Present. Director Maston.
Here.
Present. Director Moylan.
Here.
Present. Director Rabbit. Absent. Director Sears.
Here.
Present. Director Sobel.
Here.
Present. Director Yee.
Here.
Present. Second Vice President Kaufman.
Here.
Present. First Vice President Theriault.
Here.
Present. And President Parr.
Present.
Present. Thank you. You have a quorum. I'm going to now confirm staff. General Manager Dennis Mulligan.
Present.
Thank you. Joe Wire, are you on the line?
Yes.
Thank you. Ava Bauer-Furbish, are you on the line?
Present.
Thank you. Madeline Chun, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Thank you. Bridge Manager Steve Miller, are you on the line?
Present. Good morning.
Thank you. Bus Manager Mona Babauta.
Present.
Thank you. Ferry Manager Jim Swindler.
Present.
Thank you. Kelly Hopper.
Present.
Present. That confirms staff on the line.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us this morning. I know that some of you are in strange areas of the state and the country, so we appreciate the fact you'd take the time to come to the board meeting. We appreciate your continued patience as we conduct the district's business like this. As a reminder, I'll be asking if board members have any comments or questions on the items, and if there are questions, the secretary will call on you accordingly. If you're not speaking, please make sure your phones are mute to minimize the noise on today's call. Each page of the meeting packet is numbered on the bottom right-hand corner for ease of following along. First Vice President Theriault, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Madam President. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America.
and to the republic
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Theriault. Justine Block will be assisting us today to moderate our public comments. She indicates that there are not an exorbitant amount of public comments, so I think we'll just open public comments in the normal way. So, Secretary Wong, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to remind everyone on our public comment line that this is a special meeting, so public comment is limited to items on the agenda. And let's do our best to, if you're speaking twice today, to not repeat ourselves, and that'd be super helpful. Thank you very much. And Justine, I'm going to have you in a moment start to unmute the first speaker to start us off on public comment.
Good morning, Madam President. We have Shane Weinstein who will be speaking this morning under item 4, public comment. Shane,
Good morning.
can you go ahead?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, President Parr, Board Directors. My name is Shane Weinstein. I'm the President of ATU 1575, representing 250 very concerned bus operators at Golden Gate Transit. As you know, the GM wrote last Friday that warn notices will potentially be sent out as early as this coming Monday, which is blessing. Operators would then potentially be relieved of their position November 10th, just days before Thanksgiving, with Christmas right on its heels. I find it reprehensible that during the holiday season, where there's increased anxiety, mental health episodes, and increased suicide rate, that the district would push through warn notices when many variables still exist. This is completely untimely and insensitive. The district values don't support this type of action. We're better than that. We care about our employees more. We treat them with respect and dignity. That's who we are. When speaking of those variables, the first that comes to mind is the potential shift in the White House on November 3rd. We do know that if the balance of power does shift, the public transit will be funded, which would obviously limit or completely take away the need to lay off. Secondly, the district has some $219 million in reserves that can be used to help during this very difficult, infrequent, and an uncommon time. There is money that can be used from those reserves by stalling projects that are completely unnecessary currently, especially when layoffs are occurring. This money can be converted to emergency relief that's needed, and that's what we need right now. Furthermore, in the middle of the worst global health crisis in memory, my union, ATU Local 1575, and I find it incomprehensible that the Golden Gate Bridge district executives are not taking salary cuts, even while economically ruinous layoffs among the rank and file workers who made the district function are going on. Considering all the above, we feel the warn notices should not be sent out until January 1st, 2021. If this sound policy were followed, any layoffs would then be on hold until the earliest at the end of February, giving all of us time to get a clear picture of where the district is headed financially. These are extremely important issues to our members, and I hope the board will heavily discuss the matter and do their best to find alternative measures other than laying off. I thank the board for its time and attention.
Thank you, Shane. Justine, do we have another speaker?
Madam President, I do not believe we have anybody else queued. If I can have a moment to poll the room.
All right.
Here. I can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Is that Director Arnold?
It is, but I couldn't hear anything until just now.
Justine is polling the line to see if there are people wanting to speak.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And for the board, we actually have Director Arnold and Director Rabbit who have joined us since we did our roll call. So the only person I don't have accounted for is Director Belforte.
Are we ready to move on?
Not yet. It sounds like there's a discussion going on the other line.
All right, we'll wait.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Okay, we have two more speakers under public comment today. So Justine, I'll leave it to you to introduce the two speakers.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lemoyne. Lemoyne, can you please go ahead?
Yes, good morning, and thank you very much for this opportunity to address you this morning. My name is Lemoyne Moreline-Hyang. I'm a senior representative with the IFPT Local 21, and I also wanted to add our voice to the opposition to issuing the warrant notices at this point. And I would just like to make one point for the board to consider. Transportation infrastructure, the ferries, the buses, obviously the bridge, are going to be vital components of any kind of economic recovery, be that in 3 months, be that in 6 months, be that in a year. We are going to be a vital workforce to ensure that the vital infrastructure of transportation is in place, up and running, and ready to go and absorb the needed transportation out there as we recover. And this is no time to start scaling back on the workforce, to start issuing notices, to create instability, and to potentially send the workforce out into other work, which will only make it that much more difficult to mobilize that workforce when it's necessary. This is precisely the moment to deploy all available resources, be they from redirecting funds from other non-essential funds or by dipping into emergency reserves. This is the moment to do that, to make sure that the workforce is in place, mobilized, and ready to go to assist in the vital role that we will play in any kind of economic recovery. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lemoyne.
Next, we have Max Alpert, who will be speaking this morning. Mr. Alpert.
Thank you. My name is Max Alper with the Marine Engineers Beneficial Association. Thank you to the board for hearing us out today. I would also like to have the board reconsider issue 5C2. You've heard the last two speakers talk out against it, and just to echo the same comments, what is the purpose of an emergency relief fund if we don't use it in an emergency? It's there for a reason. We have a lot of people who are going to be severely impacted by your decision, and I believe the board should consider any other option besides mass layoffs. I mean, our organization is part of a coalition that works with the district, and the district hasn't come to us and asked us for any ideas of how to save money, but they're going to start laying off our members. It's not right, and the district should definitely reconsider. And thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Max.
At this time, I'd just like one more moment to poll the room. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak under item 4 this morning?
Hi, this is Frank Gleeson. I'd like to speak.
Thank you. Is there anybody in addition to Mr. Gleeson that wishes to speak? Okay, thank you. Mr. Gleeson, go ahead. We have Frank Gleeson.
Morning, Board of Directors. I'm a bus driver, and I think if you're going to be deciding today whether to lay people off, I think Mr. Wire should be asked some questions about the funds that you guys have procured from the federal government. I think it was $51 million. And also your emergency fund that you always have. I believe it's about 10% of your annual budget. Maybe we could get a breakdown to see how much has been spent, because I'm aware that a lot of the buses have been cut and a lot of the drivers' pay has been cut. So I don't think we're spending as much at Golden Gate Transit on bus drivers or buses as we did last July. I was hoping that some of the board members could ask Mr. Wire some questions about that. That might clear up the air, see how long we can go before we got to lay off some of these bus drivers and other essential workers. As is just pointed out, when the economy does come back, retraining all these people that you're laying off is going to cost a lot of money. So I just hope you guys can ask the right questions today. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, come to fucking work, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Is he out, Frank?
Justine, are there more?
Madam President, we have no more speakers on the line.
All right. In that case, anyone that's out there that for some reason couldn't tap in, you could please submit your comments electronically to the district secretary at .org, and we will review your comments. Mr. Mulligan, would you like to offer any response to the comments, or are you going to wait till a later time?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'll wait till we come to the agenda item. It appeared that they were all talking about the agenda item in the Warrant Act, so I think that's the appropriate juncture. Plus, there may be other individuals that are waiting till that agenda item to speak on public comment on that specific item. So I'll defer, but I will talk about it.
All right, thank you. That concludes the public comment under item 4. Madam Secretary, please continue to the next item on the agenda.
Item number 5A1 under special order of business is to approve actions relative to adoption of the Calpers health contract resolutions and associated actions for Amalgamated Transit Union Local Number 1575, non-represented employees, Public Employees Union Local 1, and members of the Board of Directors. The staff report is found on page 3 of your packet, and Kelly Hopper will be presenting this report. Ms. Hopper, go ahead and begin.
Thank you. Good morning, President Parr and members of the board. I'm bringing a recommendation to you today asking for the board to approve the adoption of the Calpers Health Program resolutions for 3 groups of people plus the board members. There are actually 10 separate resolutions that were submitted by Calpers that require our board of directors approval. And rather than go through them individually, I will be presenting it as one, the 10 resolutions together. But let me just break them down. There's actually 3 separate components. One is for active employees, and that's our active non-represented administrative employees. Our Public Employees Union Local 1, which are our painters unit. The Amalgamated Transit Union, which are our bus operators, and our active board of directors. So there's a packet of resolutions for active employees and board members. There's also a packet of resolutions for our survivors, the survivor allowance, which is for our painters union, our bus operators union, and our non-represented administrative. And then finally, there's also a similar packet for those 3 groups for survivors who are currently not receiving a retirement allowance. And this is, I believe, as I mentioned to you in our last meeting, at the last meeting with the board, is that this is a Calpers grandfathering clause that's going to allow our current survivors who do not have current spouses of survivors who do not have a current retirement allowance to continue to receive medical benefits through Calpers as a result of this action. So as I said, there are 10 resolutions, non-represented painters and Amalgamated Transit Union, which are our bus operators, and then also for our active board members. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. Are there any questions from directors on this item? Hearing none, that concludes the discussion on item 5A1. The action before us is to approve adoption of 10 Calpers Health Program resolutions for Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 1575 employees and retirees, non-represented administrative employees and retirees, Public Employees Union Local 1 painters, employees and retirees, and members of the Board of Directors, each to be effective January 1st, 2021. There are a series of 10 resolutions to be approved by the board, and I would like to ask if anyone is opposed to taking all of these in one action to approve all 10 to avoid taking all 10 separately. Are there any objections? All right, before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this particular item?
President Parr, I believe we do have a speaker on this, so I'm going to turn it back over to Justine to allow our speaker to comment on this item.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you to the board members and staff. Thank you to the board and the staff for allowing me to speak to the board. Yesterday, I received the response from Kelly Hopper. Thank you, Kelly. And all of the issues that I brought up at the August 27th, 2018 were not answered. And I am concerned that we are still having different options available to different employees, so that you're creating a lack of parity and a problem for people who, for some, joined bronze plans starting back in 2014 when they were first implemented, and I participated for 1 year and went
mejor el meeting del Bridgeway. Está en vivo ahorita.
Hello? Am I still on?
You are.
And there are people who've been using the bronze plan. They were encouraged to join the bronze plan, cheaper for the district. It enabled employees to roll over every year any funds they didn't use. And they could use that money, as well as the people who had FSAs, who were active employees, for anything that the IRS deemed eligible per 213D. The district has now arbitrarily decided, and I don't know why still, that they're not allowing employees to use their HRA card that they will be receiving at some point from someone. I know we don't know yet why we can't use it for 213D expenses and not just for medical and prescription co-pays and co-insurance. The other reason I bring this up is that people under the dental program have to do some out-of-pocket for major work, such as crowns and implants. That is only covered at 50%. And should you have a lot of dental work in a year, you will easily reach your max and need to use those funds to help pay for that. I understand the district is with their back up against the wall in this financial time, but I still did not get an answer as how much money is sitting in the HRA that is managed by third-party vendors and easily accessible to the district, because I want to know how much money the district is going to rob out of the pockets of active employees and retirees to go to some fund. I still don't know the answer to that. I included other questions back to the copper. I won't go through all of them right now. But there seems to be an issue here where we'll grandfather in certain things for some people, but not in the case. And how people...
Ms. Moore, you've reached the end of your time for public comment on this.
Thank you. I've submitted everything in writing and will expect a response on the items I could not discuss.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, you've heard the public comments. Do I have a...
Can I make a public comment?
Who is it,
Not
please?
You have been muted. To unmute
Is there
yourself,
anybody else who would like
start
to speak
the
under
time. Okay, we are polling the public line to see if there are more comments on this one.
All right, thank you, Amrit.
We have one person who would like to comment on this item. So, Justine, would you like to introduce the next speaker?
Yes, the next speaker is Mary Curry.
Good morning,
Go
Mary.
ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, board members. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak. I don't have my remarks prepared, but I just wanted to speak to some confusion that Ms. Moore has also pointed to. I haven't had a chance to review all the materials as a retiree that's non-represented, but it looks like the HRA funds are going to go away, and I've been struggling since I retired on Medicare, and it's just to come to come to more changes is very challenging, and I think that the information needs to be presented more clearly and separate Medicare folks from non-Medicare folks, because our situations are different. And I understand you guys are trying to save some money, but I think this HRA thing has got to be more carefully thought out. And I'm sorry my remarks aren't more prepared, but I just wanted to make that brief statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Justine, are we finished with public comment?
That concludes public comment on this item.
All right, thank you. You've heard the public comments. There were no comments from the board prior to public comments. If there are no further comments, could I get a motion, please, from Second Vice President Cochran?
Yes, I so move.
Thank you. Do I hear a second from someone?
That's Patty, seconding.
Thank you, Patty. Madam Secretary, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Thank you. We have a first from Second Vice President Cochran, and a second from Director Garbarino, starting with Director Arnold. Oh, sorry, Director Arnold. There you go. Director Arnold?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Director Belforte? Absent. Director Fewer?
Aye.
Aye. Director Frederick?
Yes.
Yes. Director Garbarino?
Yes.
Yes. Director Grosboll?
Yes.
Yes. Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Yes. Director Hill?
Yes.
Yes. Director Maskin?
Yes.
Yes. Director Moylan?
Yes.
Yes. Director Rabbit?
Aye.
Aye. Director Sears?
Yes.
Yes. Director Sobel?
Aye.
Aye. Director Yee?
Aye.
Aye. Second Vice President Cochran?
Yes.
Yes. First Vice President Terrio?
Yes.
Yes. And President Parr?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Would you please continue with the next item on the agenda?
The next item is item number 5A2, which is to authorize execution of a professional services master agreement with Navia Benefit Solutions, Inc., relative to best interest number 2020D050, HRA, FSA, and retiree premium payment benefit administration services. This staff report begins on page 41, and Ms. Hopper is also presenting this report. Ms. Hopper, go ahead and begin.
Thank you very much. We're looking for authorization of the master agreement, as Amaret just mentioned, to provide benefit administration services as pertains to the health reimbursement account for the Calpers health medical transition. This is a component that is required for us to not only provide the HRA debit card for our employees and retirees, but also to provide the financial clearinghouse for our retiree, our retiree repayment of the HRA and monthly premium. The contract is with Navia for a 3-year base term with 2 one-year options for an amount not to exceed, a total amount not to exceed of $459,000. The district actually worked with its benefit consultant, which is Mercer, to solicit proposals to find qualified vendors that would meet. It's very complex, the matter that we need to do. Not only are we administering the HRA cards for our active employees, but also a separate HRA account for our Medicare retirees, as well as a retiree premium reimbursement that needs to occur as part of the approval that the board authorized. So we have a debit card, and we also have a financial clearing piece that needs to occur for our retirees. So it was going to take a very specialized vendor to be able to perform all of the services that were required by the district. Mercer helped us with identifying potential vendors. We then went through a procurement process which included interviews of the top 3 firms and rating them by the selection committee. And from that, it was determined that Navia best met the needs of the district. And through our procurement policy that is approved by the board of directors, it was determined that a best interest procurement would be applicable in this manner. So as I mentioned, it's a 3-year contract, base contract with 2 one-year options at the general manager's discretion for a total amount not to exceed $459,000 or approximately $91,800 per year. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. Are there any questions from directors on this issue? Hearing none, that concludes discussion on the item. The action before us is to authorize execution of professional services agreement with Navia Benefit Solutions to provide benefit administration services as part of the Calpers health benefit transition. Before we take our votes, is there anyone from the public on the line wishing to speak on this item?
We're going to pull the public line right now, so please bear with us.
Thank you.
It appears we have 2 speakers on this item, so we're going to open up the public comment with Justine. Can you introduce the speakers, please?
Yes, good morning. Helen Moore will be speaking. Helen, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, the board and staff again for allowing me to speak. I'm now understanding Navia will be handling the management of the HRA fund, and we're going to pay them $91,000 a year to do this. We do have a benefits administrator in the HR department. I do not understand why we would need that position and pay to have somebody manage this car. If the district is looking to save money and they want to outsource more and more of the jobs that an HR department would do, I certainly would hope that there are layoffs that will occur in the HR department. It doesn't make sense to me why we have to keep going outside, have a very large HR department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Our next speaker is Mary Curry. Mary, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, members of the board. Again, Mary Curry, retiree. I just wanted to echo some of what Ms. Moore was saying. I think $459,000 for the 2-year contract is excessive. And I know you guys are going to pass this, but as the public member and a retiree, I find it almost offensive that there's no discussion of any of what's being changed for us. When I was hired at the district, it was 100% medical care for life, and then that changed, and now it's changing again. And my pension isn't growing, and no complaints because I have a pension. But I just find it really upsetting that you guys aren't even discussing these items. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Are there other speakers?
We have no other speakers on this item, Madam President.
All right, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Are there other discussion items from the board?
Yeah, this is Dick. I had a question.
All right, go ahead.
Well, maybe it would be appropriate just for Minister Kelly or somebody to explain why you're not using the HR department in response to the speaker's comments.
Sure. Managing health reimbursement accounts is not HR expertise. The HRA accounts deals with financial matters where employees will have a debit card to pay some of the costs associated with their medical plan. And the transactions associated with setting up debit accounts, managing debit accounts, issuing debit cards is not an HR function, and it's expertise that does not exist within the district's workforce.
All right, thank you. Are there
I
other?
have a question. Oh, hi. I'm Sandra Fewer. I have one question.
Yes, go ahead, Director Fewer.
Thank you, President. I'm just inquiring whether or not we're going to be offering a info line for our workers, since it seems as though this is a big switchover and there may be many questions. Is there a number that employees can call or retirees can call just to have questions answered?
I'll let Kelly answer, but we've had a series of Zoom meetings where we've had hundreds of employees and retirees participate, and Kelly can kind of talk a little bit about that and steps going forward for when people have questions on how to manage things.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. That is correct, Director Fewer. We've had 9 Zoom meetings so far with our various units, ATU, active employees, retiree employees, Medicare eligible retirees as well. We also have a benefits hotline, and that has been standing for the last several years. So employees and retirees can call the hotline. We also created some specialized intranet pages that are targeted to both of our active employees, and then a separate intranet site for our retirees, where we are trying to keep all information, documents, comparative documents, contact information on that site. And we're trying to keep that updated, as well as uploading some of the Zoom calls so that if they needed to go back and listen to it again, as well as any presentation materials. Coming up this following week and the week after, we also have a series of meetings that are scheduled where the carriers and Calpers will be coming in and explaining the actual plan design for our active employees, our retirees, and our post-65 retirees, and that will take place over the next 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. And all of this is accessible on the website?
That is
all
correct.
Information? That's great. Do you happen to have the hotline number now?
I do. It's 257-4526.
Thank you
Area
very
code
much.
415.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Are there other director comments or questions? Hearing none. Director Hernandez?
This is Director Hernandez. I have a question, please.
Okay. Ed?
Thank you, Madam President. As to the HRA component being the driving factor as to why we need to, the HRA card being the driving factor as to why we have to hire or contract with Navia Benefit Solutions, I'm wondering the services that they're going to provide to us, are these not services that we can train our own staff to do? And if so, how do those costs compare? And if anyone could make a comment as to what other, I know HRA cards are becoming more and more popular. Is this customarily handled outside of agencies, or are you aware of any agencies that are actually handling them with their existing HR staffs? Thank you.
I can jump in here real briefly, and then Dennis can take it for the pieces that I don't mention. So there are several components to this vendor providing services. So not only is it an HRA debit card, which the district does not issue debit cards, but it also is all the back end. So it's the processing. So there's a call center. There's also a claims management center. So for instance, if someone is making a claim, to be able to track, verify, and validate those claims, and then apply the approval to the various accounts. And there is also the whole IRS component of ensuring that it's an appropriate expense that is allowed under the terms of an HRA account. So there's a lot of complexities. And then additionally that we are asking them to provide is this additional retirement reimbursement component. As you know, with the board's action is for employees that are retired that are eligible to have their medical premiums paid by the district. Calpers takes the initial premium from the retiree. And this vendor is going to be able to allow us to reimburse the retiree before Calpers takes the premiums from their retirement check, and essentially making them whole. There's not very many vendors can do that, but it's a level of complexity to be able to have those financial transactions occur prior to the Calpers withdrawal. And Dennis, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. The district's not that big, so the size and scale for us to manage this program doesn't fit well with respect to the size of our organization. So if we created infrastructure to manage this, it would be, we couldn't manage all of it, but the parts we could would require a lot more staff and expense because we're not that big. We're not processing, tens of thousands of these. And so the expense would also be quite great. And it's also important to note that most employers do not provide these. Most people that are in Calpers medical plans, there's 1.4 million people who receive their medical benefits from Calpers. Most of those individuals do not have access to an HRA. So this is an extra benefit the district is providing to our employees, and we're doing it so that we can provide medical benefits better than most organizations and that are closely aligned to those that we've been offering historically. And so it's important to note that it is unusual to have this, and if we were solely focused on saving money, we would not offer HRAs so that we wouldn't have the expense of the HRAs or the expense of managing it. But the board's policy decision is we want to provide HRAs to minimize the financial risk associated with people receiving medical benefits, and that's just part of who we are. But our scale is such that it doesn't make sense for us to take on a function like this for a very small workforce when this is generally something that's centralized, and there's a handful of companies that do this work.
Thank you very much for those answers from staff, and thank you, Madam President.
Yes. Are there other questions? Hearing none, could I have a motion to move this item, please?
I move it.
All right. Is that Director Moylan?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Director Moylan. May I have a second?
Second by Rabbit.
All right. Thank you, Director Rabbit. Madam Secretary, would you please do a roll call vote?
Thank you. We have a first from Director Moylan and a second from Director Rabbit. And now I'm starting with Director Arnold.
Aye.
Aye. Director Belforte. Absent. Director Fewer.
Aye.
Aye. Director Frederick.
Yes.
Yes. Director Garbarino.
Yes.
Yes. Director Grosball.
Yes.
Yes. Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Aye. Director Hill.
Yes.
Yes. Director Maston.
Yes.
Yes. Director Moylan.
Yes.
Yes. Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Aye. Director Sears. Director Sears, yes. Director Sobel?
Aye.
Aye. Director Yee?
Aye.
Aye. Second Vice President Cochran?
Yes.
Yes. First Vice President Theriault?
Yes.
Yes. And President Parr?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. The motion passes 16-0.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 5B, which is closed session. Before we go into closed session, I'd like to thank everyone for being patient during the meeting. We'll be placing the public on hold, and we'll reconnect the call after the closed session discussion. Madeline?
Yes, I'm sorry, I think I was muted. But anyway, yes, we will now convene in closed session in accordance with the Brown Act in order to review matters of labor negotiations as noted on the agenda.
Okay, hang on one second, and we will put us into closed session. Okay, we are back in open session.
That's great. So it's about 10:52 a.m. and the board met in closed session as permitted by the Brown Act in order to receive a briefing from its labor negotiator, Molly Cabin, regarding negotiations with the groups that are noted on the agenda. And I think at this point there will be an action item for the board's consideration.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, would you please move us on to the next item?
Yes, as Attorney Chen has mentioned, item number 5C1 is to authorize ratification of a memorandum of understanding with American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees / Public Employee Union Local Number 1, representing the bridge painters. District's labor negotiator, Ms. Molly Caban, is on the line to present this matter. Ms. Caban, please begin.
Thank you. We're seeking ratification of a tentative agreement with the Painters Union, the terms of which are the following. First, a 12-month memorandum of understanding with expiration on August 31st, 2021. Two, the district has agreed to fill 4 apprentice positions in the Painters Apprenticeship Program. These positions are to be filled by current district employees, so it is not expected to increase costs to the district. 3, a Me Too provision. If the district settles with the union coalition and agrees to more favorable terms with the coalition for wages or benefits, such terms would apply to the Painters Union. 4, the painters have agreed to transition to the Calpers medical plans consistent with the ATU and the non-rep plans. And finally, the painters would like recognition of their good faith bargaining. So I have a prepared statement to read in that regard. In negotiations, the painters wanted it known that they took a risk in agreeing to join the Calpers medical plans with no wage increases or other financial incentives. They took the lead in this regard, agreeing to these changes ahead of the coalition, and they did it for the right reasons, to try to save other employees' jobs given the current financial crisis. And I want to say personally, I wholeheartedly agree with this statement. And so I promised I would let the board know that the painters deserve a lot of credit for making tough choices in these negotiations. So please join me, Dennis, and Steve Miller in thanking them for their professionalism and their compassion for their coworkers. It is much deserved. And that is the terms of the agreement.
Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments by the directors other than our appreciation for their good faith bargaining and the fact that they are willing to meet with us in good faith and make some good decisions?
Why don't we give them a round of applause?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you again. Are there other discussion items for this agenda item? If not, that concludes discussion on this item with our gratefulness. The action before us is to ratify a memorandum of understanding with Public Employees Union Local 1, representing bridge painters, that includes a term of 1 year, no wage increase, and switching to Calpers medical plan. Before we take our vote, is there anyone on the public line?
We're going to pull the public line one more time. Thank you. We have one speaker for this item, and I'd like to open it up to Justine to introduce our speaker.
Thank you.
Madam President, we have Frank Gleeson on the line this morning.
Good morning again, Frank.
Hi, board members. Good morning. I too would like to join you in your applause for the Public Employees Local 1 painters. They're making sacrifices to hang on to jobs. I think that's admirable. I think that the ATU also and the non-representative employees have all acquiesced and joined the Calpers. medical plan, saving the district lots of money. I think our efforts should be rewarded with a delay in the WARN Act by you board directors today, in appreciation also for not only the painters stepping up. I think the bus drivers stepped up. We took a huge cut in pay a couple months ago. And I appreciate that you can applaud the employees. I'd also appreciate that if you could actually ask questions about the money saved by the district over the course of a comparison of August, July 2020 to 2019 in the bus division. And once again, congratulations to the painters. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Gleeson. Are there other public comments?
There are no other public comments for this item.
Hearing none, Director Arnold, would you please move this item?
This item?
Yes. The bridge painters. I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Was that a motion? Okay.
I moved it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Director Garbarino, could you please second the item?
Happy to second the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Thank you. We have a first for Director Arnold and a second for Director Garbarino. Director Arnold?
Yes.
Yes. Director Belforte? Absent. Director Fewer?
Aye.
Aye. Director Fredericks?
Yes.
Aye. Director Garbarino?
Yes.
Yes. Director Grosboll?
Yes.
Yes. Director Hernandez?
Aye.
Aye. Director Hill?
Yes.
Yes. Director Maston?
Yes.
Yes. Director Moylan?
Yes.
Yes. Director Rabbit?
Aye.
Aye. Director Sears?
Yes.
Yes. Director Sobel?
Aye.
Aye. Director Yee?
Aye.
Aye. Second Vice President Cochran?
Yes.
Yes. First Vice President Theriault?
Yes.
Yes. And President Barr?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The motion passes 16-0.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please continue to the next item on the agenda?
The next item is item number 5C2, and it's to approve the issuance of a worker adjustment and retraining notification, known as the WARN Act notices, in response to COVID-19 service impact and depletion of associated federal funding. This staff report begins on page 47, and General Manager Douglas Mulligan will be presenting this report. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, members of the public. Staff is recommending that the Board of Directors approve the issuance of Federal Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act notices, commonly called WARN Act notices, to potentially affected employees and union representatives in response to the service impacts, service demand reductions resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic and the depletion of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act grant funding that we received, and that's commonly called CARES Act money. This recommendation is made with the understanding that if additional federal grants are provided to support transit operations during the pandemic, then we would not have to proceed with the layoffs. The item is notice to satisfy a federal legal or procedural requirement for a 60-day notice. If you act on this today, it is not a decision to lay off any employees. However, it is the first step in a process that could ultimately lead to layoffs. Any decision to lay off employees would be the subject of an action at a future board meeting. The pandemic and resulting economic fallout are lingering much longer than originally anticipated and much longer than we can afford while maintaining current staffing levels. The district was fortunate to receive $51.6 million in CARES Act funding, which has allowed us to keep all of our regular full-time employees employed during the pandemic, even with demand for services at a reduction or a great small fraction of pre-COVID levels. However, that CARES Act money is anticipated to run out as soon as the end of next month. Currently, bus ridership is down 80%. So today we're only carrying 20% of our normal ridership. Currently, ferry ridership is down 97%. So today we're only carrying 3% of our normal ferry ridership. And most significantly, tolls are down. Tolls are down about 35%. So we're receiving 65% of our regular toll money. Typically, about half of our tolls are spent to operate and maintain the bridge consistent with your mission, while the other half is spent subsidizing bus and ferry operations. So with a 35% reduction in toll funding, we are experiencing a 70% reduction in the toll funding that's available to subsidize our bus and ferry operations. So that's a significant impact. If an action is taken today to issue the notices, and if subsequently federal money is not forthcoming and layoffs were to happen, if a layoff is to happen, it's anticipated that laid off staff could be brought back in a measured way, commensurate with the return of our customers on our buses and ferries, and also with bridge traffic, which is how we would have to pay for all of that. The issuance of the notices is consistent with the board's mission statement, which is the protection, maintenance, operation, and enhancement of the Golden Gate Bridge. It is consistent with the fact that we're spending more money than we are currently taking in on bridge tolls and transit fares. And it is consistent with the public's greatly diminished demand for a bus and ferry service. The district is looking at doing a significant temporary restructuring in the organization if federal funds are not forthcoming. The affected positions district-wide are approximately 242 positions out of 840 authorized positions in our budget. So about 29% of all authorized positions would be impacted by this item, which is not surprising considering we're only seeing 3% of our ferry customers and only 20% of our bus customers. With respect to the magnitude of it, since we have a significant reduction in ferry customers, 97% are not with us today, the impact of this notice would affect about half of our ferry positions. Many of those are currently vacant, but half of our ferry positions that are authorized in the budget would be on this list, and over a third of our bus positions would be on the list. With respect to the district division, about 11% of the positions would be on the list. The number in the district division is lower because portions of the district division are grant funded or tied to working on the bridge. For example, the engineering department is primarily grant funded, and we're still going to continue to seismically retrofit the bridge and prepare for the Phase 3B seismic retrofit project. No bridge positions are contemplated as part of this layoff notice, consistent with your mission statement. This item is, to reiterate, just an action to notice employees. It is not an action to actually lay anybody off. That would be subject to a future action, but this would provide the flexibility for the district to navigate these troubling, challenging economic times when we've seen a precipitous drop in demand for our services and a precipitous drop in our revenues. So staff recommends that you take this action today, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mulligan. Board of Directors, do you have questions or comments? Yes, Director Yee, go ahead.
Yeah, Dennis, can you say again with this notice, is it a 30-day notice? Is that what it is?
It's a 60-day notice.
60 days?
So the Federal WARN Act requires a 60-day notice for what they refer to as mass layoffs. So this would be a 60-day notice if you were to act on it today, and no employee would be laid off unless you came at a subsequent meeting, say in early October, to finalize the decision, at which time they would receive a 30-day follow-up notice. And at that time, we may have a better sense on federal relief.
And then, and talk about the reserves a little bit. What kind of reserves do we have? Is it all we have is capital reserves?
The district has a variety of different reserves that are addressed in our budget book for anyone that's online or anyone listening on the meeting. Reserves are on page 42 of our adopted budget and also in Appendix A of our adopted budget, which is on page 179, and our budget is online. The board has a variety of reserve structures set up, and how the reserves are created is a small amount of toll money every year is taken from our operating budget and set aside to grow reserves. And that amount is based on a self-insured retention program that we have, which is our insurance, which is a restricted reserve. We then have emergency reserves and operating reserves, which will be spent regardless of what actions you take before the existing year is out. And then we have our largest reserves, which are for capital projects. The amount of the capital project reserves is based on the projections to maintain and replace existing capital infrastructure, and it has taken decades to build these reserves. I should add that the contemplated layoff is not adequate to fully meet our financial shortfall. So if the district were to ultimately have to do a layoff at the size that we're contemplating noticing, we would be spending reserves throughout the rest of this year, albeit at a much, much reduced rate. The district does have emergency and operating reserves, and this clearly is an emergency, but the size and scale of those will not survive the current fiscal year. It's also important to note that the CARES Act provided money to cover COVID-19 impacts to bus and ferry operations and to transit operators across the country. However, the CARES Act did not provide any money to cover COVID-19 impacts to bridge revenues and bridge expenses. So for 3 months after the shelter-in-place orders were issued, we were not collecting enough tolls to cover the cost of maintaining and operating the bridge because we weren't even covering the 50% threshold. For a period of 5 weeks, toll revenues were down 70%, so we were only collecting 30% of our normal tolls. With respect to the capital reserves, we have in our budget book appendices that show the contemplated projects that they're set aside for. It's also important to know that for capital projects, they're typically funded mostly with other people's money. Most of our capital projects, the bulk of our capital program, uses state and federal grants. However, these grants require what's known as a local match. So we use our reserves for the local match on our capital projects. For example, the ongoing construction of the suicide on the bridge, it's about 2/3 federally funded with grants that we receive from MTC and Caltrans, but our reserves are paying about 1/3 of that cost. And in keeping with the district's mission statement, the reserves are how we pay for projects like that and other bridge projects, such as the final phase of the seismic retrofitting of the bridge. And pursuant to your mission statement, to the extent resources allow, reserves help pay for new buses and new ferry boats. The district's reserves are spoken for based on prior board decisions. On page 45 of the adopted budget, there's a graph that shows the projected reserves for capital projects, and it shows the red line crossing the zero threshold at a future year. So it would be contrary to the district's mission statement for the board to choose to spend its reserves to avoid laying off employees if we don't have demand for our services. Today, we have greatly reduced demand, and so we have other work that we are giving employees to keep them busy since we have federal funds to pay for them, or we send employees home and pay them for a full day even though they're not working a full day because we have federal grants to keep them in our employ. The staff does not recommend spending our reserves in that regard. We do acknowledge, though, that if a layoff were to happen at some future date, we would still be spending some of our reserves just to maintain the normalcy of order and the continuity of operations. We have a lot of fixed costs in our bus and ferry operations, and so just to maintain all of our ferry boats during a temporary shutdown when we're only using a few of them is vital for the community, and so we have more staffing on board than we do have actual customer demand for the service.
So,
Right, thank you.
So I'm not, let me continue.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not talking about the capital reserves, but in regards to the emergency and operating reserves that we have, you're anticipating that that it would be spent down regardless of what's going to happen this year?
That is correct, but I'll turn it over to our CFO, Joe Wire, to talk more specifically on the numbers of the reserves.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, as the report that we provided that was provided to the board at the last board meeting, and as you know, every month we're putting in a status on the budget, and that's essentially to give the board and public a notice of how well we've done in trying to achieve some sort of a balance to the budget when we asked the board to originally pass 3 months ago. So that report, latest report in August, showed that the target that we're still trying to meet is about just under $50 million. The layoffs that the WARN Act notices, the number of WARN Act notices that we're sending out would, even if they were all actually turned into layoffs would produce a set of savings that we think would be in the $25 to $30 million range. So that would leave us still $20 million or more short of the target that we've that to balance the budget. That amount of money could be made up by spending of the reserves, or the board could task its staff to go back and look for more savings. So that at least at this point in time, it's envisioned that we won't be that we will be exhausting or coming close to exhausting, depending on how things exactly work out, the amount of reserves that we have set aside. And then the other thing to remember is these fiscal years that we talk about are just artificial stake in the sand. It's not like on July 1, 2021, everything's going to be back to normal. We all know it's likely not going to be back to normal. It's going to be a gradual process. It was a quick drop down, but it's going to be a gradual process back. That means that if we expend our reserves now or in this fiscal year, what are you going to do next fiscal year? You're not getting any more. We're not replenishing the reserves because we're not making the money. So we want to think about those reserves as something that would last through the duration of this, or last until we can equate our expenses with our revenues. So these notices are the major beginning of that process. And I don't want to sell short the efforts that have already been made that I think were mentioned by some of the speakers and others. Yes, we have made efforts already to reduce costs. The district has reduced its costs. Unfortunately, the dramatic drop in revenues were much greater than the incremental reduction in costs, no matter how much pain those incremental reductions have already caused. They have. When you lose 97% of your riders, say, for example, on ferry, and remember, ridership contributed more than 50% of the cost of ferry. So essentially, that's losing almost half the money that ferry was used to provide its services just by losing its own passengers and their fares. And then, as Dennis mentioned, the fact that the subsidy from tolls, which makes up most of the rest of the money that they use, that's down 70%. Ferry's sitting left with 25, or to try to run its entire business with like 25 to 30% of its revenue. And you can't run 100% of your business on 30% of your revenue, no matter how much you would like to do so. So we've been able to...
I'll add one more thing, Joe. The emergency reserves is $8.2 million, and the operating reserves is $17.5 million, and those numbers appear for anyone listening on the phone on page 179 of the district's adopted budget.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
I had a question or comment also.
Of course. Go ahead, Director Grossville.
One thing that concerns me is I'm not aware of any of the other Bay Area transit agencies that have issued a warn notice. Have any of those done so?
Not in the Bay Area. Elsewhere in the country they have, and that's a function of our financial models. So the Bridge District's toll revenue is historically very stable. When the economy goes up and down, we have very minor modifications in our toll stream, and so we have we don't go through these feast and famine cycles of other transit agencies. Other transit agencies get a lot of their money from sales taxes, and sales taxes go up and down quite radically, and so they go through lots of pain that we typically don't. However, the pandemic has affected our revenue stream disproportionately greater than others, and so we're hitting the cliff a few months earlier than other agencies. We're running out of money faster. I think next in line behind us in the Bay Area is Caltrain, and then several of the smaller operators. Others in the country have done this. Denver RT, which is a large transit operator, has already issued WARN Act notices, and New York MTA is in the press talking about coming up and issuing WARN Act notices. But in the Bay Area, because of the unique nature of our revenue stream, where tolls provide the lion's share of our transit subsidy, and tolls have precipitously dropped, we have a bigger cliff than most agencies, and so we're hitting this a little sooner.
But our tolls are back up to 65% almost, correct?
The tolls are back up to 65%, but the first 50% goes to the bridge. And so the other 50%, we have 15 of that 50% available for transit. So that's only 30% of the normal amount we would have of tolls available for transit. So that's a 70% reduction in the tolls that we have to spend on transit. And that's a huge hole.
And WEDA hasn't done a notice either, have they? They've kept all their staff and haven't done one of these notices, correct?
That's correct. WEDA has a different financial model than us and a different revenue stream. Plus, the other bridges have bounced back they never went as low as us, and they bounced back faster. So the Bay Bridge, the metering lights come on at 5:30 in the morning now. We don't have congestion on our bridge. The Bay Bridge is at about 85%, and so they're short. And the Bay Bridge, anyway, they have a different financial model, so they have not felt the pain as soon as we have. That is correct.
I guess it just troubles me that, we've had some tough negotiations with ATU. We've had tough negotiations with the coalition over the last few years, including this year, and now we'd be the first of the Bay Area agencies to do this, and as one of the speakers noted, well before the holidays. I guess, I'm not convinced that we can't wait a few months, so I would make a motion that this matter be postponed and the notice not be considered until January.
All right, thank you. Are there other director comments?
Well, yes, Madam President.
Go ahead, Director Sobel.
Excuse me, I think for the debate, we need a second on the motion. So for the sake of debate, I'll second the motion.
All right, thank you for that. All right, now Director Sobel.
Yes, Madam President. So, this is a difficult conversation, obviously. And what we're talking about with the WARN Act is not a layoff. It is a warning of a layoff. In 2 months, if we decide to go in Director Grosball's direction, it can be put off as long as we want. What this mechanism allows us to do is to have another lever to pull if we need to do it. I mean, that's what this is about today. This is not about imminent layoffs. And, the bottom line here is we only have so much money, and our revenue model is different than other agencies. But I know residents, and in this case, toll payers and the public are asking government to make the same hard decisions the public is having to make every day, and not kick this down the road to where we're dealing with this in the new year and we are in desperate straits. How many businesses survive, how many agencies can survive with a budget deficit of $50 million and no hopes of closing that? And granted, it isn't, you have a fiscal year, and if you want to push it a month or something, that, we can do that. In the private sector, you can't do that. You run out of money, your business is closed. And what staff is asking is for us to begin preparing for what happens if we don't see a rebound here. And we talk a lot about in Corona science, the Corona, listen to the science, listen to the facts. Well, I would implore my fellow directors to listen to the staff and listen to Joe Wire regarding where this money is and isn't. We don't have the ability to move much money around. The core mission of this bridge district is the Golden Gate Bridge. And when we're talking about seismic fixes and the suicide net, which the entire board voted for, that comes with a responsibility to remember that the bridge comes first. And even, as you heard, excuse me, even if we were to focus less on the bridge, the revenue is still in dire straits. So, again, I would just say, what we're talking about today is having one more tool in the kit bag. And we've already delayed, I think, making some tough decisions probably earlier in this process because we care so much about the employees. I remember earlier in the year when we were hoping that the COVID pandemic would come to a close and we'd see some rebounding, we heard from some people saying, well, you know, if you were going to do layoffs and everything else, you know, you should have done them earlier because now we're rebounding, and that causes a separate set of problems. Fact is, this board and the staff took a decision to go this far without laying anybody off. Walk outside your doors. We all know tons of people in our lives who are struggling, and we have been, as a board and as a district, keeping everybody on board in one way or another. That can't go on forever. And so, you know, hoping and praying that the pandemic is brought to a close, hoping and praying that our good employees can stay around, but understanding that it isn't going to be solved by doing nothing. We have to take drastic action at some point. Now, that may be 2 months from now, it may be 4 months from now, but at some point, if we don't get a handle on this, we are going to come back and have a board meeting that is going to be extremely, extremely painful. So with that, I'll close, Madam President.
Thank you for that. Comments or questions?
Yes, Kate Sears, could I ask a question?
Please, go ahead, Director Sears.
Yeah, thanks very much. So just let's go back on the chronology just a little bit, and I fully understand that this is really a procedural proposition. There's no decision being made at this time to lay people off. It just creates ability of doing so in the future. So this is a 60-day notice. I've always been troubled, like I think most people are, with the idea of laying anyone off before the holidays. The issuance of these notices doesn't mean that we, even if we felt that layoffs were appropriate, that we would have to lay people off before the holidays. I guess what I'm asking is, if we issue these notices and then we have a subsequent conversation at the board about whether we actually need to have layoffs, we can also include in that the timing of those layoffs, correct? So that we don't necessarily find ourselves, unless we choose to, in the position of laying people off right before the holidays. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. That is correct, Director Sears.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there other comments?
Yes, President, this is Sandra Fewer.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention to my fellow directors that President Yee and I, President of the Board of Supervisors, President Yee, I keep calling him President Yee, and I have gone through this with the school district before as we sat on that board too. These are painful times. In 2009, when we sent out, 503 warrant notices to our teachers, it was extremely painful to do that too. However, I think at that time we felt it was extremely necessary because of just the economic downturn, and also the state of California didn't have the funds to pay for public education and our teachers, and we had to send off these layoff notices in order to access also rainy day funds. I just want to say that I've spoken to people in labor too, who have actually expressed sort of the hardship that is going to happen if they are laid off, and also some of the employment, I think, that has already been I think partially laid off, our deckhands and captains. But I do see actually that our main responsibility and our mission is the Golden Gate Bridge, and that so many people depend on that bridge, and it's our responsibility to upkeep that bridge as a lifeline also for the livelihood of people who have to commute for work and use that bridge on an everyday basis. So I just want to say that I reluctantly will vote for this. I think that it is a very hard decision. For those of you who have never made this decision before, I empathize. It is a very hard decision to make because these are people's livelihoods. But when you think about the responsibility of the Golden Gate Bridge and the maintenance that it requires in order to be functional, and how many people depend on it, and this bridge is a lifeline for many people too, I am hoping that we will not have to have that discussion about actual layoffs. I am hoping that we will recover as we are reopening many, many things also in the city and in neighboring counties. And I am hoping that the federal government will step in and give us some money. But I understand the decision at this time, and I understand what is before us today. And I do understand also, having worked with the city and county of San Francisco and now with this bridge authority, there is a really big difference between the city and county of San Francisco as we're able to put measures on that get us out of an economic crisis or help us out of an economic crisis. And many of those ballot measures are on the ballot this November. This bridge authority does not have the authority to do that. And we have nothing on the ballot this November to get us out of the hole. So I just wanted to say I understand it. I think it is hard. It is difficult. In our seats as directors, we are asked to make hard decisions all the time. But probably this is the hardest of my term as serving on this Golden Gate Golden Gate Bridge Board of Directors. I will say that I am hoping that we can not have the conversation later on, and that if we do, that we will also be looking at furloughs. We'll be looking at other things besides complete layoffs. But I understand the general manager and what he must do now to protect actually the bridge and also to protect the finances of the bridge so that they can continue to operate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Farrer, for those comments. Are there other board members that would like to comment?
This is Bert.
All right, go ahead, Director Hill.
Yeah, I've talked about this before, and thank you, Supervisor Fewer, for your comments. It really does hurt, and I think the observations you had were very profound, being a fellow San Franciscan. I've been through that also. I brought up before that we don't really have any assurance that when the COVID is over, we're not ever going to return to normal. The indications are probably not. And I think we may have something that's going to take many, many years to recover from. So I don't think we should assume that we're ever going to hit a point anytime near now when things are going to go back to a normal situation. Now, that isn't to say that it couldn't, and that's an outside possibility, but I think we have to take that into mind also when we're making this decision. And the fact that this isn't the actual notice, this is just the authority associated with the notice. I'm very much inclined. I say this has been very difficult for me because I understand Director Grossbull and Michael completely. I'm inclined to go that way, but I think in this particular case, I would have to support it.
All right, thank you. Are there other director comments?
Madam President, if I may, David Rabbit.
Yes, thank you, David.
Probably, like others have said, this is always the most difficult decision. We just this morning, actually, right before this meeting, passed our budget in Sonoma County going forward. We were able to eliminate layoffs, but that was really only because of some ability within our budget to use one-time funds for ongoing costs. Not something we don't want to do, but we also put forward about 18% of nearly a $150 million settlement from PG&E, and it was only because of that this year that we avoided probably 30 or 40 real layoffs, not just vacant positions, but real layoffs, which is unusual in our county. I do agree with Director Hill. I mean, what we're looking at is not just a typical recession. What we're looking at is the overlay of COVID. And in public transit especially, and I know the general manager and myself serve on the MTC committee, looking at everyone facing a fiscal cliff that's coming up in short order. I don't know how many of the 26, 27, whatever that number is in the Bay Area, public transit agencies that can last even in much, into the new year, let alone get through the end of this year. So I do think that there's more uncertainty, and you also have, looming out there the after effects of telecommuting and how many will stay that way. And Harvard business study says about 15%. Well, that's a significant impact to the bridge one way or the other. So I do, it is a tough decision, but again, as has been mentioned earlier, for me it's about transparency, honesty, and it is procedural. And I understand it's that first step. No one wants to take the first step if you don't want to go where you might end up. But I do think that if you didn't take that first step, it would go against our fiduciary duty, quite frankly, look after the funds for the Golden Gate Bridge. So thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Thank you for those comments. Are there other comments by board members? If not, we seem to have...
Madam President, may I be recognized,
yes.
please? This is Sabrina Hernandez.
Of course. Go ahead, Director Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate all perspectives around the table, always. And there have been, you know, plenty of thoughtful comments that we've shared today. And I'm going to toss mine in. Pardon me. So I'm encouraged by the fact that the trends are looking good in terms of the increases in the number of tolls being collected on a monthly basis. The trend is good. I'm obviously disheartened and troubled by the...
You want a lettuce double?
Hello? I'm obviously disheartened by the fact that our bus and ferry services are not being used anywhere near the degree that we are used to in normal times. And as many have pointed out, am I still being heard?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. But as many have pointed out, you know, we all need to look to a new normal. We're not ever going back to what was before March 16th or March 17th. And that new normal is something that we have no crystal ball to say exactly what that's going to be. It may, in fact, turn out to be that we have, you know, 65, 75, 85, maybe 120% of riders relative to pre-pandemic numbers once this whole thing settles out. You know, certainly if that were the case, that would be a help to us financially. And I know that there would be other factors that you know may change in ways that might not be favorable to us for our new normal. So yeah, it's a difficult decision. There is no crystal ball, but there are some things, some indicators that I think are important to acknowledge. Just this month, there are so many changes going on in San Francisco County that it's really encouraging, I believe, particularly to business owners. We have shopping malls are opening up. We have gyms, professional services, and family entertainment opening up. We have schools opening up by the end of this month. Hotels, outdoor buses, outdoor tour buses and boats. We have museums, indoor and outdoor, opening up. These are all important to acknowledge. There are going to be people coming in and out of the city, going to jobs at these facilities and with these businesses. The people I'm sure you've all read in the paper about how Twitter is making some creative moves to use their building space in San Francisco. There's over 100,000 square feet of building space in their downtown building that they're going to be subleasing. And in response to the difficulties in running your business in San Francisco right now and with the pandemic, there are some really, really attractive terms being offered for building spaces at Twitter and under consideration with other property owners in the city to lure folks to come back. One of the speakers today talked about how the economic recovery is going to depend on transportation infrastructure. And we cannot lose sight of that. Yes, we have responsibilities to the district. Yes, we have a bridge that it's important to maintain, and we've made a commitment to certain improvements. We need to find ways to hold up our word on that. But we cannot ignore these other factors, and we certainly cannot ignore the fact that the Bridge District exists because we have dedicated bus drivers, because we have dedicated ferry staff, because we have dedicated admin staff, because we have people who meet our clients on a day-to-day basis, face-to-face, welcome them to use our services, maintain our buildings and our structures and our vehicles.
we can't lose sight of the fact that lives will be in upheaval as a result of the decisions that we're pondering today. So I guess what I'm saying is that I will be, and I wanted to bring back the focus as Director Sobel is good at doing, to what is on the table as a point of order. There is a motion on the table. There is a motion on the table that was seconded. And so when people say, I will be supporting this item, I will be supporting this item, I want people just to remember what's on the table. And that is that we consider, that we delay this decision for, I believe Director Grosbo said, until January. So what I'm saying is I believe that there's enough information, there are enough unknowns out there, there's enough, but there's enough information here just with the activity that's happened in the month of September in San Francisco County, and I know it's happening in Marin County as well and other counties. Things are moving in a good direction. And I believe they will continue to move in a good direction. All those businesses that are opening up in the city will depend on our transportation infrastructure. We need to be aware of that, recognize that, acknowledge that. So I am in support of the motion on the floor that was put forth by my colleague, Director Grosbo, and seconded by Director Terrio. And I hope that, this is a difficult decision, but I just don't want us to lose sight of the fact that things are moving in a good direction, and that people's lives are important and our employees are important. And the effects to their mental health as well as their economic stability depends on what we decide with this WARN Act notice. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Director Fernandez. Are there other comments?
I would like to make a comment. Alice?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Director. I've lost your name, Alice. Director Fredericks.
This is Director Fredericks. I'd just like to point out that putting this tool in the toolkit does not prevent the board at any time from taking advantage of any improvements in the economy and any indication that the COVID epidemic is waning and everything is picking up. Even if we vote not to delay taking action on the WARN Act tool today, we can still in the future make appropriate decisions locked in with what's happening with the economy. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Fredericks. I think what I'll do is review for, yes.
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to call an end of debate. If you're going to go ahead and say something, that's fine, but I do have something to say. This is Director Terrio.
All right, go ahead.
I have my little notepad in front of me, and I have check marks next to names, and so I have a pretty good notion of how this vote is going to go. That said, I did make some points in the Labor Advisory Committee meeting this morning. I won't reiterate them here. I do actually believe that layoffs in some degree are inevitable. The question is at what point and in what degree. And while some of the questions I raised in this morning's Labor Advisory Committee had very cogent answers from staff, there was still some vagueness as to exactly how this is going to play out. I am not satisfied that we have exhausted all possibilities for reducing layoffs or for mitigating their effects. And I don't know really that January is the appropriate date for delay for this. It is, however, the one that I first heard proposed. I realize that my vote will be something of a protest vote here rather than an effective vote. Nonetheless, I will make it as a message to staff and to the unions to sit down and engage to try to minimize the effect of this on the workers that I'm very cognizant are part of the reason I am here on the board. So that's what I have to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to ask Attorney Chung if she would weigh in on a point of order here, please. We have a motion on the floor to postpone. We also, if that motion does not pass, then we have a motion to issue the warn notices. Is it appropriate to take public comment both times, or only now, or only with the resolution if it goes forward?
Yes, Madam President and members of the board, I'm not sure if I can answer that question without asking you another question, which is to request a clarification from the maker of the motion to delay, whether that includes an open-ended delay or whether it was contemplated, as Director Hernandez indicated, that perhaps the consideration of issuance of a warn notice was to be delayed until just January 1st. So that's one clarification that we ought to have on the motion that's on the floor at the moment.
I can respond to that. My motion was to just partly because some of the speakers, the union members, actually asked for January, so it was partly in good faith to comply with their request. So it was postponed until January.
All right, thank you for that.
All right. So it seems that it would be appropriate to consider that motion first and to ask for public comment on that motion.
All right. With that, let's ask Justine if she would please see if there are members of the public that would like to respond to or like to comment on this motion. The motion being to postpone the warn notices until January 2021.
We're pulling the public comment now.
Thank you.
Few seconds.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Cool.
9 speakers.
I'm sorry, how many?
We have 9 speakers, and we're going to start with Shane Weinstein.
Thank you.
All right, and with that many speakers,
President Parr, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I would appreciate it if you could keep your comments so that we can stay within a time period. Thank you. Go ahead, Shane.
Okay, thank you very much. Directors, I first want you to imagine driving a 45-foot bus through San Francisco in the rain during a pandemic with a layoff hanging over your head during the holidays. Where do you think that operator's focus is going to be? And while I appreciate the two directors who have said the bridge comes first, I don't agree. This is an emergency, and after listening to my public comment earlier, and as you listen to my fellow brothers and sisters who come behind me, our words and our letters, I hope, can create more of a healthy discussion. I want to thank the GM for putting out a memo just yesterday that said the coronavirus pandemic has been, and this is a quote, the coronavirus pandemic has been a stressful time for people, which can lead to increased anxiety and in some cases depression. He goes on to say, while everyone reacts differently in times of crisis, fear and anxiety about disease, potential layoffs, and foreboding skies can be overwhelming and cause strong emotions. Experts tell us that stress can include fear and worry about your own health and your health of the loved ones, changes in your sleep or eating patterns, difficulty sleeping and concentrating, worsening chronic health problems, and increased use of alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs. During this time, it is important that we recognize the signs to take care of ourselves, the ones that are closest to us. We aren't asking here for an upended time. What we're doing is we're asking you for a little bit of time so the variables can play out. There's many variables that exist. I think you know, like I've said before, that in the White House, it might change November 3rd. We would get funded. So, you know, one of the directors said when you guys approved the 2021 fiscal year budget that this document, meaning the budget, is going to be extremely pliable, certainly more than in past years. I'm asking that you look into what your reserves say, what the emergency reserves are going to show you, and please use them. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Shane.
Our next speaker has identified herself as a passenger. She would like to speak today.
Yes, good morning. I'm a Golden Gate passenger. I would like to speak and remind you all that you have a legal duty and responsibility to each of your employees. That means that those duties and responsibilities can be addressed to the federal and state agencies as appropriate. You have not been regarded to have well managed COVID care grants that were distributed in the amount of $30.1 million, and then again in the amount of $56.1 million. You have all been asked to look at a pay cut to stand in solidarity of your workers, and you have refused. There are a myriad of bases in which you could be investigated and reviewed. How is it that your transit operator, or transit manager, Mona Babada, that her father has been largely influencing every one of your Golden Gate operators to date, from as the executive director of Guam Regional Transit Authority? How is it viable to consider sustaining a ferry when your bus operators are the ones imperative in need? Your transit agency, to the full cognizance of each one of you, is in violation of 5 civil disability rights laws. Each of you are cognizant of that. Each of you know that there is no agency that receives federal or state grants nor funding when in violation of the law. A suicide barrier in the amount of $211 million, and then an additional delay of $29 million, probably more by the time of its completion, is not a viable option to consider when you are weighing out human lives and livelihoods. I am speaking for each one of your bus operators, the men and women who come out every day with due diligence, with remarkable professionalism, who have remained the visible presence for your agency through a pandemic, fully exposing themselves, who have remained the visible presence unfailingly through the year and 8 months that you benefited by giving yourselves raises while failing to give them a contract. Suicide is not an independent act. I invite you to realize that you have damaged the morale of your extraordinary drivers who now 8 of whom are afflicted with a COVID, 1 of whom has sadly died of its consequences. I invite you to regard that you have damaged their morale, their good faith, their trust, their confidence, and their esteem. And I will remind them that they are not disempowered. Suicide is not an independent act. It is a culmination of factors that push any individual by despair, by entrapment, by a sense of futility. I would invite each of you not to stand answerable for pushing any of your remarkable bus operators or causing them to jump.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our next speaker is Marina Sacitano.
I don't think I'd want to go after that.
Marina?
She was talking to me the other day about she.
Mr. Moylan, I believe that you need to mute your phone.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Good morning, President Parr and directors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I urge you to delay the issuance of the WARN notice until January 21st. I understand the position it gives the district, more flexibility, as they won't have to wait 60 days to lay off its workforce. But it sends a very chilling message to your employees to sit and live through each day, wondering if this will be the day they receive the notice.
As a child, I lived through that threat that my father would be laid off at any time, and the uncertainty for a family is daunting, and it cannot be taken lightly. Somebody has to mute their phone because I feel like yeah, okay, thanks. The district has the resources to fulfill this request. Our amazing Speaker Pelosi has made possible for the district to use existing capital funds by deferring the project to use these funds for wages and benefits, operating expenses. And this is the time to do that. WIDA has also received CARES Act money and committed to keep our 25 crews on the payroll through next June. Washington State Ferry has not laid anyone off. The Alaska Marine Highway has not laid anyone off due to COVID. In fact, they began paying workers as soon as they got their CARES money, even though they weren't at work. Am I hearing an echo, or does someone need to put their mute on? The amount of money needed to continue is less than $3 million a month. This is an attainable goal. We're only asking for a couple months. And the amount of the bridge traffic is increasing. The city is opening up for our private employers to operate their tour ferries and cruises in a safe manner next week. This should also be an opportunity for the district to operate their weekend service. I am aware that the district is reviewing new route opportunities. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to take a ferry ride out in the bay away from the fires and the shelter in place. The effect of a layoff to a family. Okay, somebody's talking. Seriously? Guys. The effect of a layoff to a family in our community is devastating. The first effect is the loss of health care. No one can afford COBRA on an unemployment check of $450 a week of unemployment. Then there's food and the mortgage. Currently, there is not a multitude of jobs for people. They are relying on you, their employer, to stay the course, give hope that our future will be better. The Labor Coalition and the Amalgamated Transit Union, your labor partners, stand shoulder to shoulder to urge you to ensure the future of our members and their families through the end of the year. Please do all in your power to find the needed money for wages and benefits out of your reserves and your capital projects that aren't time sensitive. You know, we went through your budget. We sent you all the information.
Marina, I believe that. Go ahead. Go ahead,
Okay,
Justine.
but you know, you're letting people interrupt what I'm talking about. You have noise ongoing, which is very distracting. But
Marina,
in
your time is
conclusion,
up.
please hear our voices and delay the WARN notice until January 1st, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina.
Our next speaker is Helen Moore.
Go ahead, Helen.
Thank you very much to the board and the staff that are present and the people who are on the line listening. I worked for the district for over 27 years, and at least half of my career I was a road supervisor of bus drivers, supervised bus drivers. And then I dealt with complaints from the public as customer relations supervisor, and lived through the previous layoff session after the recession, 2008, 2009, when we went through phased service cuts. I even laid off one person twice because I was able to keep him on and then laid him off again. Just getting that notice is enough to put the fear of God in people. It's very discomforting. In even putting this warning letter out, and I understand why the district is doing this. I would believe that the district has run out of their care funds and now they can let people go at this point. but the amount of public outreach to do this and the effect of the public outreach internally and externally is extremely painful. I don't necessarily agree with others that we should put this off till January 1st or January 21st, and I'm hoping that there will be a change come November 3rd, but I wouldn't put any hopes on that. But I think we should, as we did before, go to the staff, ask them to submit ideas to try to mitigate the pain of layoffs of any kind. Of any kind. The staff are not stupid. Bus drivers are not stupid. Ferry operators are not stupid. They have ideas how to make their divisions run better. And you should listen to them. They have great ideas. And another thing, Mr. Mulligan mentioned in a response to me about HR not being able to handle the HRA administrator duties.
Ms. Moore,
the
conversation is about the WARN notices, please.
I understand, but if our staff are not trained to do the jobs they're hired to do now,
Ms. Moore,
how do you expect
please
to
come back to
step
the
in?
topic.
I just did, ma'am.
We've reached the end of the 3-minute comment period.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is David Tuttle.
Go ahead, David.
David Tuttle, are you on the line? Looks like we'll move on to our next speaker, and our next speaker is Frank Gleeson. Mr. Gleeson?
Good morning again, Frank. Good morning. Are you hearing me now?
We are.
Okay. Yeah, you guys got a big decision. I get it. And, you know, the 60-day notice, you really are hanging something over your employees' heads when you choose to use it. And that is that they're going to possibly be out of work. I know one of the directors talked about pulling a lever, and I think that sounds more like a hangman's job. I just urge all of you directors to realize that you have an opportunity to not only represent the counties you come from, but the employees that are under your guidance and actually under threat of layoff. And I'd recommend that you postpone this. You don't need to do it today. In fact, one of the directors seemed to be unclear on how long it was, if it was 30 days or 60 days, which kind of caused me a little worry. We all got to know what we're voting on. One of the other things is this: yesterday was World Suicide Prevention Day, and today is 9/11. So in piggybacking on the suicide note that one of the speakers was talking about, it does put a lot of pressure on people when they think they got 60 days until they got to get out of the house and start hoofing it and find another job while they're waiting, while they're still driving around in a bus. Next to impossible to look for a job while you're working all the time. Bus drivers took a huge pay cut, over $100 a day. We talked to you about that. I think that your numbers are skewed. I think you got a bunch of money. You have $51 million, and I think Mr. Wire can actually reiterate that that money was only used for transportation. So you use it for the ferry, you use it for the bus. So you had a reserve fund that was emergency, and if this isn't an emergency, I don't know which one of you can tell me what the biggest emergency was in their lifetime, but I think this might be it. So let's use our common sense. Let this slide for a few more months. You can have all the time in the world to vote for this, but as soon as you start that clock running, you're putting pressure on your employees, and it's needless. I want to also piggyback and say that I do think the economy is coming back. I think America got behind 9/11 and we stood up and we actually fought and we made things better. The economy was really scary then and people stood up. So I think as public representatives, you should lead, not start cutting people. Lead. All you have to do is lead. Delay this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gleeson.
Oh, I'm done. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Pete Hotline. Pete?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon, President Parr and members of the board. My name is Pete Gusline, and I currently work in the Marketing and Communications Department. I realize some of my comments may be premature in that this item is only for approval of the issuance of layoff notices. And having said this, I disagree with the consideration of layoffs as temporary. And I ask the board to direct staff to consider creative staff-reducing measures if it comes to that. We recently surveyed our bus and ferry passengers, and riders indicated they would return when their employers reopen, shelter-in-place orders lift, and enhanced safety measures are implemented on our buses and ferries. 2 of these have not happened yet, and 1 is ongoing. Many riders also indicated that their employers would likely approach reopening in a phased way with staggered schedules and continued telecommuting. To me, and as Directors Hill and Rabbit noted, does not indicate a quick return to normalcy or even a guaranteed return of riders to our buses and boats. I encourage the district to consider furloughing staff instead of laying off staff, or to implement a furlough to layoff hybrid. Furloughs would allow employees to keep benefits in place, but no longer earn salary or vacation time. And furloughs could also allow staff to work a reduced number of hours, perhaps 3 or 4 days a week or 15 days a month, or
Pete, let me remind you that the
layoff.
issue at hand here is whether or not to postpone the warn notices.
Okay. Another suggestion would be to allow employees to use up their vacation comp or floating holiday time if desired before moving to a furlough or layoff status. And if layoffs are necessary, I encourage the district to consider retirement or incentivizing retirement as a way of reducing its workforce. Many employees are of retirement age, and it seems prudent that the district try to learn and or come up with creative inducements or motivations for employees who might be on the fence about retiring. These are likely higher salaried employees, so the cost savings to the district would be greater than if it only considered less.
Let me remind you that that comes at a later meeting. Our discussion today is about whether or not to postpone it until January.
Oh.
If you could target your comments.
Okay. I will, okay, I'll just end with the current state of the Bay Area, and that is the pandemic, wildfires, air quality, the threat of power shutoff. Laid off employees might simply move away, leaving the district short if and when the time comes to bring staff back. These are unprecedented and uncertain times, and perhaps call for unprecedented measures. I don't envy the decisions that the board and staff will be making these next few months, and I thank you for allowing me.
We've reached our 3-minute limit.
Thank you, Pete.
Our next speaker is Kamiko Joseph.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'd like to express my concern. I'm almost a 20-year driver with the Golden Gate District, and at the stress of it all, with us driving every day since this pandemic has started, to have a notice given to us to stress us out even more, considering that we don't know anybody on our bus that has it or could carry it
or even our fellow drivers that work with us carry it. And then to add more stress to our life with this decision of this notice is unfair to us all. We've all been through cuts already by bringing up a notice and stressing our lives out and giving us headaches and worrying about what ifs. It's just added more drama to our daily life. Doing it right before holidays and everything combined together, somebody could stress out and take their life. We've seen it as happen since I've been here. There's nobody in the higher ups, in the higher ranks that are taking a cut but the drivers. So I plead the stress of this notice needs to be delayed until January. It needs to be revisited. It needs to be talked about in deep detail on what we can do to save our livelihood. This is our livelihood. This is something that we deal with on a daily basis since day one. We are the only ones out here going hard for this district every day. And now you're adding more stress to our lives by trying to give us a notice and saying, oh, we're potentially going to lay you off, by the way, on top of all the other added stress that we're driving a 40-foot coach every day. We have to maintain our space, maintain our mindset on not focusing on what if, that we can get through life daily and have this notice hanging over our head. So I stress that we delay this notice, revisit it. We need to open the discussions between the drivers and management also needs to take a look at their having a cut also. We've already been cut enough. We need to revisit this. I disagree. We need to delay this notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamiko.
So the church say amen.
Our next speaker is John Holden.
Either homeless or drunk or people that look sick.
Mr. Holden.
Hello, good morning, President Parr, directors, and General Manager Mulligan. I did not plan on speaking on this item today, but considering some of the director's comments about the budget, it was a little hard to stomach, considering, you know, the ferry crashing into the ferry building, leasing a ferry $7,000 a day.
John, the topic is whether or not, to postpone the decision until January.
Yes, that is the topic, because I didn't hear the budget concerns when it came to, these wind studies, but now I hear the budget concerns from the directors considering, ridership and tolls, but I didn't hear the same concern when it came to, the wind studies and, the ferry crashes and all that stuff. So it was a little hard to listen to that. My personal opinion on this topic is it's kind of boilerplate, and even though it'll affect me with 3-year seniority probably more than more senior drivers, it would be good to postpone it till January to let the districts and the unions work out, considering probably layoffs will be based on seniority. But we have a lot of senior drivers that seem to be out for one reason or the other, where we're kind of running short-staffed. So my consideration would be, let's postpone it to January and work on solutions to keep most staff working. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Madam President, I'd like to take one more poll of the room.
May I speak?
Justine is actually polling the other room right now.
Yes, thank you.
We have one more speaker. Justine, can you please introduce our last speaker?
We have Aspen Thompson who'd like to speak.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Aspen.
Okay.
I've been with the district for a year now. Operators who I've grown to love, they've gotten COVID. I can see it happening because passengers, they touch you and they get into your personal space without mask on. That's something to stress over, and now we have the stress of layoffs in the midst of bad air quality and
Justine, have we lost Aston?
It appears we may have. Aston, are you still on the line? Yes, it appears we have. We have no other speakers on this.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second on the table now. The motion is that we postpone issuing the WARN notices until January 2021. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll on that?
Yes, thank you. So we have a motion to delay this item, and that is first by Director Grosville and the second by Director Theriault. I'm going to start with Director Arnold.
Yes.
Is this a motion to delay this?
Motion to delay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Aye. Director Belforte. Absent. Director Fewer.
No.
No. Director Fredericks.
No.
No. Director Garbarino.
No.
No. Director Grosville.
Yes.
Yes. Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Yes. Director Hill.
Yes.
Yes. Director Maston.
Yes.
Yes. Director Moylan is absent. Director Rabbit.
No.
No. Director Sears.
Yes.
Yes. Director Sobel.
No.
No. Director Yee.
No.
No. Second Vice President Cochran.
No.
No. First Vice President Theriault.
Yes.
Yes. And President Parr.
No.
No. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 no's and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ayes. Motion failed. That was a very close vote, everyone.
That was a very close vote. I appreciate all of the comments and questions and all of the speakers, and it's a very challenging decision, as we all know. All right, so let's move on to the actual item. The actual item before us is to approve the issuance of Federal Worker Adjustment Retraining Notifications, WARN Act notices, to potentially affected employees and union representatives in response to service impacts resulting from COVID-19 pandemic and depletion of the coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security CARES Act funding. This recommendation is made with the understanding that if additional federal grants to support the transit operations during the pandemic are made to the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, then there will be the contemplated layoffs may not be necessary. And are there board members that would like to speak to this? All right, I assume, Ms. Chung, I assume that the public comment from before would qualify as public comment for this, or do we need to do it again?
Well, I would suggest that we have had a pretty comprehensive solicitation of public comments on this question, but perhaps Justine could simply double check to make sure that there is no new comments, that is to say that there shouldn't be any duplication of comments from those that have been said before.
Thank you for that.
And a question on that.
Yes,
should be, yes, before we go to any public comment, and we've obviously heard a lot on that, should we have a motion and a second and then ask for discussion?
Of course. Director Sobel, would you care to make the motion?
Sadly, and knowing that it's only a mechanism, not not the end of the discussion on this. I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Director Fredericks, we'll take your second. All right, thank you for the point of order. All right, now let's proceed with Justine, if you would check and see if there were any new speakers, new comments.
Thank you. She's going to pull the line now.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have 6 additional speakers on this item. So Justine, please introduce our 6 speakers.
Our first speaker is Robert Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman.
Hello, my name is Robert Kaufman. I've been with the district 10.5 years. I'm a bus operator, and I the budget and these layoffs. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to, did I just come, okay. So once again, I'm a bus operator at Golden Gate Transit a little more than 10 years. And first off, I just wanted to mention what's going on with pay over the last Hi, I keep getting a recording that says, please unmute myself. So am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so anyway, I've taken a substantial income loss over the last couple of months through this COVID. What hasn't gone ahead and been acknowledged is part of a function of our pay isn't just our hourly wage, it's the duration. And I wanted to go ahead and draw attention to the board, to the fact, and the public, that we even, overtime normally, if you want to call it overtime, it starts out for 8 hours. Our overtime doesn't kick into 10 3/4 hours. We're at regular rate, and the reason why that is it has been well established that the duration of the day is a big component of our pay. I've taken thousands of dollars a month hit currently. Now, talking about the people in the layoff, a lot of these people, they're new drivers, all right? And they live paycheck to paycheck and all. They don't have any expendable income, all right? So my question I think it needs to be posed is before we go ahead and talk about layoffs, shouldn't there be some adjustments in the structuring of pay for, say, deputy managers and managers? They have their salaries afford them a lot of money beyond just the normal means to live. And you're going ahead, and before you're looking at these solutions, you're going ahead and you're just pulling the rug out from underneath these people that are just basically getting by. I think before you go ahead and look at doing layoffs, you need to go ahead and look at yourself and say, hey, do we really need to be making these hundreds of thousands of dollars, these people, before you go ahead and then you go ahead and send these people to the door? So please. I think that basically restructuring a reduction in pay for others of the bridge, the deputy managers, etc. I think it's only fair that that gets looked at before you go ahead and do layoffs. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Let me remind the speakers that this is not to issue any layoff notices right now. It's to issue the warn notices that layoffs could be possible in the next 60 days. So please keep that in mind with your comments.
Our next speaker is Max Calpers.
I'm sorry, I missed the name.
Good afternoon. My name is Max Alper. I'm a representative for the engineers. Thank you to the board for listening to me again. I spoke earlier this morning, and I'll say it again. While slightly disappointed by the board still has a chance to act. You've heard a lot of comments about how even sending out the WARN Act notices are going to have a major impact on the mental health of all of the employees of the district, and we had the chance, the board had the chance to delay this until January. Well, the board still has the chance to delay this. If the board votes no about sending the notices out now, then it would be delayed at least a month, and that would be a major help to all of the employees of the district. So I'm imploring the board to, once again, just take some time, think about your vote, and see within yourself to not vote for item 5C2. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Our next speaker is Frank Gleeson.
Good morning.
Go ahead,
This is Frank Gleeson again. I think that I feel a little better about the way that vote went. I'm hoping that a couple of you can change your mind. The thing is this, many of you sit on the Transportation Authority of Marin, many of you sit on the Marin Transit Board, many of you sit on the SMART Board. None of you are invoking the WARN Act at any of those locations. So please, why don't you just hold off until you get it all together. North Bay, do a WARN Act for the whole North Bay. Don't just shoot one little group. And as my drivers have said, you know, we're all given. The painters gave, you applauded them already. The drivers, the bus drivers have been given like unbelievable. They're given like hundreds of dollars a day. Because I think I sent all of you an email that showed you my paycheck. I don't get overtime. Ask Dennis, he's on the line. We don't get overtime. What we do is we got a special type of pay scale, and he can explain it to you if you'd like to. And also Mona's sitting there, and I'd like one of you to ask her, what is the day-to-day comparison from August last year
Frank,
to August this year? And that would be really good. I think those numbers would be necessary because I think you save the money. And it is about the WARN Act because I don't think you need to invoke it yet because you haven't really eaten into your money yet. And those numbers that the deputy manager of the bus division could give you from last year to this year would show that we got a much less pay, everything is cost less from last year to this year. That's the savings right there. And the last thing is if she doesn't have the numbers, why wouldn't she have the numbers? Today's the day when you're talking about laying her people off. She should have the numbers. Ask her, one of you, please. We're almost there. We can do this. Let's lead. Let's stick together. Let's all be in this together. Management can take the cut. Drivers are taking a cut. The ferry people are taking a cut. The painters, you applauded them. Come on. Let's all stick in this together. And look, it's 9/11. It's America's day to really pull together. Let's do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank.
Our next speaker is Shane Weinstein.
Go ahead, Shane.
Madam President, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. You know, as we sit here, I'm glad that the vote almost split, but I can assure you as we sit here that somebody's going to be losing their job 60 days from today. So I'm very disappointed at the lack of understanding from the directors and the turmoil that this is going to cause throughout the ferry and the bus division. You know, you talked about your mission statement earlier and the importance of the bridge. That bridge was not built without the blood, sweat, and tears of people's hands. And so I know what that mission statement says, but what you are doing as directors is you're getting away from your core values. Go look at your core values. I understand you looked at your mission statement, but go look at your core values. The people that have made this operation run for year over year over year, they're the ones that are taking the cuts. They're the ones that are going to be stressed out. They're the ones that this is affecting. So when we talk about that bridge insurance system, which is millions of dollars overbid or underbid, I applaud the district for trying to save lives. But what you're doing by making this decision is you are taking their safety deterrent system away. I urge you to think about this again, change your vote, delay this, and we'll talk about it at a later date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane.
Our next speaker is Helen Moore.
Go ahead, Helen.
Yes, Director Parr, could you state what we're allowed to make comments on at this time before I proceed?
The comments are on the discussion item, which is to approve the issuance of the Federal Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act notices to the potentially affected employees and union representatives.
Thank you very much.
So we'll be voting on whether or not to issue them.
Yes. Having been a road supervisor and the customer relations supervisor at the Golden Gate Bridge for over 27 years, the issuance of any warning layoff notice at this particular time is very unfair to staff who will just be waiting to see what happens come Christmas time, as has been pointed out before. If the vote is delayed, even to take the vote now, but let's say to do the WARN Act, but we will not take any action to do any notification to employees until after the first of the year, you would then have employees bringing forth ideas, cost-saving ideas, tax-saving ideas. The staff in all of your divisions know how their operations work, sometimes better than their managers. My staff proved that to me over and over again. But I implore you not to do this today, not on September 11th. That was a huge day, and I was working at the district on that day. And it was daunting for ferry operations staff and bus operations staff to function for a long time after that. I was present during the phase 1 and phase 2 service cuts during the recession. Having too much notice was hard, but also the not knowing what's going on. Those have just published the 200 plus positions they're looking at reducing. Why is there no consideration to reduce any staff who are on the bridge right now, considering they have less traffic on the bridge? If drivers have already taken a hit in their daily pay, why should they get hurt even more now? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen.
Our next speaker is Robert Barley, and I believe Robert made a statement that he wishes to yield his time to Max Alpert. Robert, is that correct?
Yes, but however, I believe you said that was inappropriate.
No, not inappropriate, just that we have to check in with our board president.
Does that mean that Max wants 6 minutes?
That means
Well,
we would
he
go
already
back.
spoke as well, Madam President, so I could go ahead and speak at this time.
All right, if you have some new items to to talk to us about. Please go ahead.
I have thoughts on the upcoming vote. Thank you again for allowing me the moment to speak. I did not prepare anything as I wasn't planning on speaking today. However, listening to the board's discussion, I feel like I have to speak up. I would implore every member of the board to think hard and look deep as to have they done absolutely everything in their power to ensure they can maintain the employees' jobs prior to a yes vote. Have they gone to the governor? Have they pooled their local resources? Have they done everything in their power? Because this is a lot of people's jobs we're talking about, and it would be a big disappointment to find out on the back end that this vote was made prematurely. So I thank you very much for your time today, and again, I would implore you for a no vote.
Thank you.
May I speak? Hello?
May I get your name, please?
My name is Monica Vinson.
Thank you, Monica. Madam President, it looks like we have one additional speaker, and that will be the end for the public comment period.
All right.
I would
Thank
also
you
like to speak. Awesome.
Me too.
I'll need a moment. I'll need a moment to poll our room again. I apologize. People are now speaking up. So our next speaker would be Monica, and then I heard someone else. Who else would like to speak?
Robert.
She's polling the line one more time just to say of the last folks who wanted to chime in there.
Hi, my name is Monica Vinson, and I've been working with Golden Gate Transit as a bus operator a little under 2 years. And I wasn't planning on speaking, but I didn't want to let this opportunity go by without speaking up for my fellow brothers and sisters. I'm a single mother. My daughter's 13, and I also take care of my 2 nephews who are 16 and 18. And with this warning going in place, it's a lot of stress. It's very stressful. And last week, as I was driving, I had to deny 5 people a ride because of the bus capacity. We only can hold so many people. So I do see the economy picking up a little. It's picking up. You guys can just give it a chance. And one of those people I had to pass up was an elderly lady, and it didn't feel good about that. So I'm asking that you guys to just hold on the warning at least till the holidays go by, and just think about what the drivers have to go through. I have to come home every day to my children, and hoping that I didn't contract the virus. And I don't go to work because it's just something to do. I go to work because I need that money. I need to work to support my family, and that's why I go to work. And I need the benefits. I need the medical. My family depends on me. So I'm just asking if you can hold on the warning, on the warn, at least until the holidays is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Our next speaker is Robert Estrom. Robert?
Hello, Robert Estrada. I'm with the Inland Boatmen's Union. So I would like to just underscore a few things that have been said, but maybe highlight them so that they aren't forgotten in this contemplation. Firstly, it was said from the board that even if the WARN notice went out today, that wouldn't necessarily mean that the layoffs would happen before the holidays. Well, I think everybody on the board who's contemplating voting yes right now and sending these WARN notices out should think about that and realize that in itself, if you feel that way, that you wouldn't want to have the layoffs happen before the holidays, that means there's no rush to put out the notice in the first place. And okay, so the motion to delay it until January was voted down by 1 vote. But there are other meetings between now and January at which any motion, when deemed timely at that point, could take place. Because if we wait until November, or you decide it meeting by meeting, but if you decided to do something in November, that would still be putting you just out past the holidays for the layoffs. Again, if you feel like that would be an important variable, as I heard expressed. And also, the other benefit is that we would have a sense of the election. We all know that there's going to be a different funding projection as to depending on how this election goes down. So there is no, it's not timely. We don't need to make this decision right now, is my point. Okay, we can't postpone it till January, that's too far out, but there are a lot of opportunities between now and then. So just vote no on sending it out now and decide as you go along. And the other thing I'd like to underscore in this decision is the importance of the ability that Nancy Pelosi put into the bill to use capital reserved funds for operating expenses. There's a reason that was there. And that's how, there's a reason that WETA hasn't laid anybody off and that they're keeping people on through the fiscal year. And I don't think that the differences in funding mechanisms are enough to make that difference between Golden Gate and VETA. So I ask that you, at least for now, vote not to send out the WARN notice and decide that as we go. There's no need to make that decision at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Our next speaker is Aspen Thompson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm sorry about the last call. It dropped for some reason, but I wanted to just finish what I was saying. That personally doing the routes, I'm like Monique said, that she's leaving people. I'm leaving people every day because I'm at capacity on my bus. So things are picking up, and I think it's not reasonable to lay off people and then bring us back for you guys to waste money on retraining us. I don't know how that will equal out, but I know it's a lot of money to train us. Also, I'm surprised that you guys aren't like offering incentives for those of whom can retire within the next year so that we can save our jobs. I'm also wondering why anyone else hasn't taken a pay cut. And I'm also surprised that people haven't left because of the stress of the job. I mean, just Wednesday, I was letting people on the bus, and ash was flying in on the bus into my face. But I still decided to show up for work, and hopefully you guys decide to show up for us and help us keep our jobs. And that's all I really would like to share with you guys.
Thank you, Aston.
President Parr, we have no other speakers on the line.
All right, thank you very much. So that concludes the discussion on this item. We have a motion and a second. Just as one last measure, are there any board members that have anything different to say?
Barbara, this is Alice.
Yes.
Director.
Hi, Alice.
I wonder if it would be appropriate to have staff comment again on the timing of the approval of the WARN notice.
I had the same question.
Of course. Dennis, would you please do that?
Sure.
And Dennis, if you would also reiterate the facts, a lot of people were trying to help us figure out what to do when we lay people off, and if you could reiterate what the process is from here on out, please.
Certainly. The action before you today is not an action to lay off. It's an action to satisfy a federal legal and procedural requirement for a 60-day notice of a potential layoff. It is the first step in a process that may ultimately lead to layoff. However, any decision to lay off would happen at a future meeting. So if the board decided to issue WARN Act notices today, we would continue to work closely with our representatives in Washington, D.C. to see if we can get additional federal relief. But if that federal relief wasn't forthcoming, at a future meeting, we could agendize an item to have the board approve a formal layoff with a 30-day notice, with a severance package, and with other items to reduce costs elsewhere in the district, some of which were proposed by some of the speakers today. But today's item is to authorize the issuance of the WARN Act notices with the understanding that if additional federal money is forthcoming, the board may not follow through on it, and with the understanding that if the board were to follow through on it, it would be at a future meeting with lots of opportunity for public comment and discussion. Is that helpful?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Judy Arnold. Could I just ask a clarifying question to the... Of course. So if we decided that this needed to be done and we had a meeting and voted yes, say in, late October, early November, early December, or November, would that time frame then go from when we voted so that it could go, it's 30, let me see what. So we say we met on October 10th, we voted. When would that go into effect? Or is what we're doing now the countdown?
Today is the count day to the earliest possible date you could do it. But let's say you had hypothetically a meeting on October 9th. Mm-hmm. At that meeting, you could then vote to say, yes, we are actually going to lay people off, and then you get to pick the date. But the earliest possible date would be November 10th, but you could pick a later date. It could be much later, but that is the earliest date you could pick. So the notice today provides the flexibility for the board to do a layoff as early as November 10th. Mm-hmm. If there's no federal money forthcoming, and if traffic does not rebound, and if the reopening that people talked about does not occur. But the notice today gives the opportunity to see if some of those things happen and still have the flexibility to address the financial shortfalls and crisis that we're now facing.
Okay, thank you very much. So President Parr, I have a follow-up. This is Director. Yes, Director. So a little more clarification. What is the consequence of delaying approving the issuance of the notice?
The consequences of delaying the issuance of the notice is the reality that the earliest possible date for a layoff would slide or slip. The consequence is that as things currently stand, we anticipate having spent all of our federal CARES Act money in October. So the consequences of delaying it means that you would spend even more of your reserves than you otherwise would have to if you were to act today. And so it removes the flexibility to implement something sooner, if that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director
Are there other
Maston?
questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
Director Maston. So
Sure.
my support of the first motion was because I felt reconsideration in January was too far out. And I believe that November would be a better time. It would get us past the election, and it would get us past the 60 days would get us into January and past the holidays. However, the fact remains that no matter when this goes, no matter when we would vote on this, there would still be this hanging over drivers and other staff's heads. That's inescapable.
That's correct.
So that's my comment.
This is Director Fredericks, but approving issuance today in reality gives us more flexibility, for both issues, for retaining jobs if anything improves, and for preserving reserves if they do not.
That's true, although there is a cost to morale. And that's been brought up several times.
Who is that speaking, please?
That was Director Maston. My apologies.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you.
This is Director Fredericks. And maybe it's my age that makes me cynical, but I doubt no matter what the vote, there is going to be much improvements in morale. It's a bad time.
All right. Are there other comments or questions?
President Parr, this is Director Fewer. I have a question for the General Manager.
Yes. Go ahead.
So, General Manager, when if we should approve this today, it doesn't mean that, it also means that it could open up discussions between labor unions and the district to come to also concessions. Is that correct?
That is correct, Director Fewer.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Before we take the vote, I'd just like to thank everyone for the conscientious discussions. I've heard all of our labor unions ask for that we seriously discuss and think deeply. I'm like Director Yee and Director Fewer. I too have issued these kinds of notices in a past life, and it's never easy, and it's always emotional. So with that, let's vote on the actual motion. It was read, but basically the action before us is to approve the issuance of the WARN Act notices, and the recommendation is made with the understanding that if additional federal grants to support the transit operations during the pandemic are made to the Golden Gate Bridge, then the contemplated layoffs may not be necessary. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. We have a first from Director Sobel and a second from Director Fredericks on this item. I'm going to start with Director Arnold.
Yes.
Yes. Arnold, yes. Belforte. Absent. Director Fewer.
Yes.
Yes. Director Fredericks.
Yes.
Yes. Director Garbarino. Absent. Director Grosboll. Can you repeat that, please, Director Grosboll?
No.
Oh, no. Thank you. Director Hernandez.
No.
No. Director Hill.
No.
No. Director Maston.
No.
No. Director Moylan. Absent. Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Aye. Director Sears.
Yes.
Yes. Director Sobel.
Aye.
Aye. Director Yee.
Aye.
Aye. Second Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
Yes. First Vice President Cheerio.
No.
No. President Parr.
Yes.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We only have 9 votes for this. The motion does not pass. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 no votes. And we have Director Garbarino no longer on the line, and neither is Director Moylan.
The motion does.
The motion does
pass.
pass.
The motion does pass. Amaret.
Hang on
the
a
motion
second.
requires, we require 10 votes.
Did Garbarino just join us again?
I'm sorry, this is Patty. I vote yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Garbarino, you are on the line?
Yes, I am. I've been in and out of connectivity, and I've been escaping fires here in Southern Oregon. I apologize.
Okay, so we can reiterate, this is on the motion to actually approve the item before us, which is to approve the issuance of the WARN Act notification. So on this matter, you are voting a yes, is that correct?
Is that the motion you just?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. And this motion does pass, in fact. Now it is a 10-5 vote.
All right. Thank you for all those clarifications. All right. Well, this is one of our longest board meetings. I think it was worth it. Thank you very much. As you know, the actions taken today are only the start of a potentially difficult road ahead. So thank you for your thoughtful discussions. We have no new business and have reached the end of our agenda. Thank you to everyone who joined us for today's meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move we adjourn.
All right, may I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you very much. The meeting is now adjourned at 12:52.